Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mental Wealth Mondays with Ashe Counseling. I'm Mandisa Jones, and this week we have a very special guest. We have Heather Collins, licensed clinical social worker. She is a therapist with Ashe Counseling. Almost 2 years coming up, right, Heather?
All years. Yep.
2 years. Heather is also a fellow Loyola alum as myself. So we're so happy to have you, Heather. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, people are coming in, so welcome. I'm going to make sure I can see the comments. So if you guys have questions, we will, answer your questions as they're coming along. But this week, Heather is going to be talking about anxiety and how it presents in relationships, not only romantic relationships, but friendships and other different type of relationships. So this is going to be very informative. I think we see this a lot, with our clients, and so I'm sure our audience experiences this, so we can learn a lot. Even myself, I'm looking forward to. I got my notes here, so I can also learn something as well. So I'll tell us a little bit about yourself, Heather, as we get started.
Okay. Always, I'm a city girl with like some Southern charm. So yes, I am a Loyola grad. I got my master's there, but I got my undergrad at Tennessee State University. And so I always knew I was going to be a counselor and a therapist and helping individuals. And I always knew I wanted to work with couples too. And so I started my journey many light years ago. And then I met Mandisa, and it's just been a great journey since then, working with individuals and couples doing therapy. I do a lot of therapy in regards to like cognitive reframing, mindfulness, as well as affirming positive thoughts and mindsets. So I do a lot of that in my therapy, as well as some like life stage changes that we all kind of experience in life.
Yeah, Heather, guys that are out there, Heather is one of our most in demand therapists that we have. I wish I could say she's accepting new clients right now, but she's she's not. Maybe exactly soon. But this is a great opportunity if you don't have the opportunity to work on her one-on-one. Ask those questions. I see we have Tawana is saying good evening, Heather. And so this is an opportunity to get some of Heather's knowledge. And let's get started, because we want to be mindful of everyone's time.
Yes. Okay, so you start off?
Yeah, I'll give you the floor. I'm here listening too.
Okay. So my main thing is, because I've been talking about anxiety as well on my page, just to give a framework, anxiety is the excessive worrying, stress, or fear that usually interferes with our daily living. So just to give a groundwork of like what anxiety is. Now, I don't want everybody going home and like, I think I get that. That's me. I got generalized anxiety. It's good to come see someone and talk to a licensed clinical social worker or, counselor in regards to this. But that is like the framework of what anxiety is. So for those who don't know what it might look like, sometimes I usually see individuals that are expressing anxiety in a way of like worrying about the news is a big thing. So we're all on like Instagram, we're watching the news, we're watching TV. And so the news is.
Yeah, that's what we call doom scrolling, right? Uh-oh, we got frozen. I hope that's not me. I might need to refresh, guys. I do apologize. Let's refresh and come back. Okay, guys, I think we lost Heather. We're going to give her a couple of minutes. She was talking about anxiety and how it presents for a lot of our clients, especially when it comes to relationships and what that may look like for people. So we're gonna, give her a couple of minutes to come back. And hi, Joy. Thank you for saying love to see Black women in mental health. Yes, it's definitely needed. There is a space for us here. A lot of our Black therapists are in high demand because we are understanding the importance of mental health, and to have someone that looks like us is important. So thank you. And here's Heather. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, hopefully it's not my connection either. I'm like in the back. But just to pick up, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So yes, doom scrolling, Mandisa was saying, yes, you see that a lot. So worried about, the future. I go out, will I be a part of this, or will this impact me? That's some areas of anxiety as we get into just a framework. So how this impacts relationships, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about intimate relationships and friendships. I use relationships very interchangeable because you have a relationship with your coworkers, you have a relationship with your friends, with your partner. They're all relationships. They're just different, I guess you could say types, I guess. But we're going to talk about intimate relationships first. So, how anxiety looks within intimate relationships can kind of be a twofold. One of the things I say is that you can have the codependency. So, the need for your partner to assure you constantly, worrying in regards to, are you pleasing your partner? Are you enough for your partner? The fear if possibly you had a traumatic situation like abuse or cheating in the past, the fear that this is occurring again, even though your spouse or your partner has never showed any examples or any incidents of this. And so, and then we can get into possibly self-sabotaging at that point because of the excessive worrying, the excessive need of your partner to affirm you, the excessive need of your partner to check in with you, the excessive need of your partner to possibly affirm that, you are everything to them.
Yeah.
And so go ahead, Mandisa.
You find that, what I'm hearing is it's almost like a cycle, right? Of like all, and then a self-fulfilling prophecy where you have this worry or this anxiety, and then you sort of causes it to actually come, into fruition for sometimes because of these thoughts that you're having, right?
Yes. The saying when people are like, don't say it, you keep saying it's gonna happen.
Yeah. Or if
Yeah,
you
so
look, you're gonna find it.
exactly. So that excessive fear that these things are going to happen. So usually anxiety to me, when I talk to couples or individuals, I say it's that fear of the future or the worry about the past. It doesn't keep us really present because we're either reliving like a previous situation, or we're trying to make sure that previous situation or fear or thoughts or experience does not happen again.
Yeah.
So we're so trying to kind of play with the puzzles of that we can't focus on what's really occurring in front of us.
Right, because we're so busy trying to control the outcome, right?
Exactly, Medisa. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, a lot of control I run into in situations where anxiety is a problem. Couples is that either the person that is experiencing a lot of the anxiety, what they're doing is trying to control the narrative in such a way where it's like, I'm only showing the parts of me I feel that this person is wanting to be with. And then usually, because a relationship is a mirror on ourselves, usually what happens is you can't keep up with that because it's not your authentic self.
Right.
And the anxiety increases because you're noticing you can't keep up with it, and then the relationship starts to crumble at that point.
Yeah, it's, so what do you say to people who say, well, how can I trust or know when I can show up as my full self? I have to, protect myself. I don't want to be hurt.
Mm-hmm. I say the first thing is recognizing the reality, and not the idea or the dream or the imagination that we created. So I
Hmm.
usually go into a lot of reality testing with my clients of like, hey, what actually occurred? What
Hmm.
was your perception of this? Now you, based on us going through this, tell me if that your perception was the truth, or was it more so of what you were feeling in the moment? Because our feelings are different sometimes than the reality of what is really occurring. So that's the first part, is reality testing. I try to like really go over like perception and reframing that, because I can perceive things one way, but that does not mean that my partner actually means that. And I need to clarify if that is an area of insecurity for me.
And
So,
how can someone do that? What are there some questions, or well, how can someone tell if it's real or if it's in their imagination or perceived realness?
so when people usually come to us, is some awareness that they're having some issues in regards to that. I think one thing is that you need to be aware that possibly something is on you. You're taking some of these steps, or you're making some steps that make you anxious. And if you're aware, I think that's the first thing. I always say to ask yourself, like I said, is this the truth?
Mm-hmm.
um is this anything that's based on my past? So like, am I being triggered by past things? If that is, then how can I clarify or communicate this to my partner?
Mm-hmm.
And then I always say, ask yourself, is your partner showing you this, or are you assuming this at this point? And
Yeah.
then of course the affirming, we want to affirm a positive, like, I belong in a healthy relationship. Sometimes we just need to process that with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and allow others to show themselves to be either trustworthy or not. We can't really put those feelings on the people without them really showing that.
Yeah, I like that, asking yourself, I tell some of my clients, how can you look at this in another way? Like, let's pretend we are, writing a book about this, and let's look at it from a different perspective. Could there be another or alternative? Because sometimes we get caught up in like, oh, this is my gut just telling me that he's out here or she's out here. And, and how can we, differentiate between, my gut, or is this really happening, or is this just me
Mhm.
up stuff from my past?
Yes. When people be saying, I know because the last time, this was exactly the same. And I say, well, this is a different time. This is a different place. Even when infidelity occurs, I always try to bring clients back to the center of like, you're making a choice at this point. So when we make a choice to, move forward, and we are anxious, we do have now an experience that goes with this.
Mhm.
How do we rebuild trust and remove that fear that this will occur again? And so at that point, I'm saying we're both entering into an agreement together. You all are deciding together in this session. And then we're using, um, we do want some reinforcement with behaviors, and act like words and actions. So if we say this, then we're reinforcing it with the actual action. And so allowing that to really navigate the new relationship, the new thing that you, even if it's your partner that did have the infidelity, once you make that choice to move forward, then we're gonna work on this new step, this new relationship moving forward. And so you do need some reinforcement in regards to anxiety, in regards to fear, meaning you say this, you do this, it meets in the middle, we can move forward. So that keeps on reinforcing that this is not the same. This is not the same relationship. This is not the same, as your past experience.
Yeah, that's good. I haven't heard that before. That's good. And how can, we're talking a little bit, a lot about intimate relationships, but how does it present in friendships?
Yeah, I think anxiety and friendship, it sometimes gets even more complicated to me because at that point with intimacy, it is a level understanding of how you want your partner possibly to show up. You're able to maybe even communicate that more. But
Mhm.
in friendships, it's that silent expectations that are not being said. And so you might have a friend that is more worried or fearful, and we might, coddle that some, and then we're like, once that friend does not get that action that they need, possibly because you're like, I can't keep this up, and something's not being said, then we end up with broken friendships at that point. And
Yeah.
so, I think that clear communication has to be made in regards to friendships, one of like expectations.
Mhm.
And I also think in regards to when you have a friend that is putting that need or transferring. So, when we counter transfer or we're transferring or we're projecting our
Mhm.
emotions, I don't know if you got enough time to go into that, but
Yeah, we got time. We got time.
okay.
Yeah.
That's something that we
Ashley just
say.
let us know that we Ashley just let us know that I guess we were having some issues. We had to refresh, so the link might have changed. So when the initial podcast went out, the link probably changed, so people
Okay.
might be having some difficulties. But we do have some people across all channels. We are on Facebook and on YouTube, guys. So you can please share, reshare this broadcast, and we love your comments and questions. So thank you, Ashley, for the update.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we
So,
got time to talk about. Yeah, go ahead, go into that because I think
oh,
that's important.
yeah, so when we say counter transfer or transferring or projecting your emotions or your feelings onto other people, it's like I feel strongly about something and I expect or I am putting this off on someone else. Even
Mhm.
as therapists, we have to be careful of this. And in friendships, that can be the same, especially if you have someone that may be anxious or may have fears and worries. Maybe they have came from a past where their family was very detached or rigid, and that are enmeshed. I mean, if they're very connected, those feelings and emotions, someone can possibly transfer those onto you. And in a friendship, when somebody is very anxious and worrying, that can seem like a lot of work to an individual if they're not understanding the place that their friends are in. And
Yeah,
so, communicating that I think is very important. Have you ever had a friend that you like, she's so needy, or, she expects so much from me, and then it sometimes can resort in anger or resentment or frustration when they are not receiving that or not able to really understand what's taking place.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
it sounds like they also probably need to do some work to resolve whatever it is that they are. Why are they expecting this from their friends, projecting these feelings, and doing that work to see what unresolved issues that they may have, and that's a great opportunity to go into therapy because I find, especially if you having a series of relationships, and we could talk about friendships and intimate relationships, you're having the same kind of issues keep coming up, it might be you, right? Everywhere
Yeah.
you go, there you are. That's my favorite saying. And so, it may be, maybe something they need to work out. And
Hmm.
if they're having, they're projecting, like you were talking about, their own fears and insecurities and all of that onto someone else. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a lot for someone to carry.
Yes, it can. It definitely can. I think the main thing you touched on is like the unresolved, unresolved issues, underlying issues that the friend or the partner is not addressing to really
Mhm.
again be present. It can be a lot if someone is constantly putting their fears and worries on their partner or their friend, and they're
Mhm.
needing to be constantly assured. Especially if you get a partner or a friend that love language is not affirming, and
Mhm.
their love language is to possibly buy gifts, or to they like touch,
Mhm.
and you're a person that's also anxious and needs to be reassured. Can you imagine how that could possibly not work if we're not really resolving or dealing with some things, or even being open to communicate with those things? I think it's a lot of silent expectations that happens when we don't resolve some of our inner experiences and trauma.
Yeah, and what about on the flip side? What can you offer to someone who's on the receiving end of a friend or intimate relationship where you notice that they're very needy? You like them, they cool, you have a good time, but sometimes the expectation for you to show up for them in a way that's a little bit out the norm. So
Yeah.
what's some good strategies if you find yourself when you don't want you see them calling you don't want to answer the phone because you know that it's going to be a bit much.
Yeah, I definitely say boundaries, one.
Okay.
And the reason why you need to be firm with someone in regards to that, because they might not know that they're asking for a lot, and so if you are someone that usually gives a lot and you utilize those boundaries, you might find yourself burnt out. And on the flip side, that friend might find themselves very upset with you because they're like, hey, you've been doing this. So I think boundaries is one, but I also think communicating in love. And I tell my clients that when partners communicate, always understand that it's in love. Like, even if they're telling you something that you might not like or want to hear, it's coming from a loving place. I really wish I could affirm that to people, that every realm, anxiety, depressed, if you are standing in the sun with majority of your friends or your partner, they're telling you something, even if they don't like, is in love. So when that person is communicating to you in regards to maybe areas of growth or needed growth, understand that it's not to hurt you. And I think a lot of times when people are anxious, they are trying to protect themselves in a way. And when a person or a friend is trying to communicate to them that it's too much or whatever,
Mhm.
sometimes a defense wall goes up. And so just having that talk with your friend, affirming to them that this is all in love, but also, that some areas are needed some fixing in, some clear communication in. And again, those boundaries, because even when a person can't, or they're not in a place of awareness, at least you're not the martyred for this. You're not the person that's being put out on the cross for this. So if you feel your friend is not able to receive, or your partner is not able, it looks a little different, I think, with intimate partners. Because if it's your
Okay.
intimate partner, I think you should probably clear communication, affirming, saying, I want to be present with you. I want to be able to help and support you. But in order for us to continue, some things needs to change, in regards to maybe, infidelity or trust, understanding that, I'm not this, and maybe reflecting with them where that came from, and going on that journey with them to say, hey, that was then and this is now. And that could be in a lot of places, anxiety if you're introducing a child, where one partner has a child, the other partner doesn't. Or I have couples, or had couples that, parenting styles were different. How do you merge that? Or, families are different. So all of that takes some communication and getting on the same page together.
Yeah. I
So
really like
yeah.
I like what Brene Brown says about that. Is like when you're communicating, and I don't know if you did you watch her special on Netflix? That's
No,
like my favorite. That's
no,
like
I
every
gotta
client
get
look,
into it.
this is the secret sauce for me. Every client has to end up at some point watch the Brene Brown Netflix. And so she tells the story about her and her husband, and there was like a conflict. Well, not really a conflict, but a conflict in her head. And so I'm not going to give it away because I want everybody to watch. But what she said is, this is the story I'm telling myself. So this is not actual, but when she's communicating to her partner, to her friends, the story that I'm telling myself is, you don't want to be bothered with me. That's why you haven't responded to my text. Or you don't really want to be my friend because you haven't came and visit me, or and so this is not true, but it's a story that I tell myself. And that's I think part of anxiety, right, is like you were talking about earlier, is this imagine your imagination is going in the future or going in the past, and kind of grounding yourself into the reality. And I think opening up, right, when you're communicating, is saying, okay, this is the story I'm telling myself. That doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean this, but this is how I feel. And then I think that kind of lets the guard down of the other person.
Yeah. I know I do so many exercises like grounding techniques. So, pulling yourself back into the present before you message, before you communicate.
Oh, good one. What are some of the techniques you like to, what's your favorite? What's your go-to?
With the grounding, I usually just use the 5 senses. That's like the quickest way to get you back present. So like floss is one good way because it smells, it tastes, it has a waxy feeling to it. It's a way to really get yourself back present. So if you have some floss with you, you can touch it, you can taste it, you can smell it, and that calms you down because you're focused on that moment. And then by that time you're done going through the 5 senses, you're back into, okay, am I even at that point that I was at that prior moment? And so that's one that I really like using, is like, go straight to the 5 senses, or what can I see, or what is my favorite thing, So usually the 5 senses really help. I have a lot of clients that are using those. Also in regards to text, which I
I think I hope we didn't lose. Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I really try to get my clients not to text as initial communication tool. So I always say write it down first. Write it down, or write down your points that you're trying to get across. So that way you're always present at those points and you're not going all into, imaginary land. So, write down, 3 to 5 points, only speak on those points if you need to. Try to communicate, if you can, with words over the phone or face to face. If text message is the last result, make sure again you're sticking to those points. Yeah. So those are 2 ones that I definitely try to like. And I like how you said about what is your mind telling you is the first thing. And making sure when you communicate that, you're saying that clear, that this is my mind saying this. I say to my clients, like, just say how you feel, how you took it, and then ask your partner, ask your friend, did you mean it that way? Because this is how I feel. So usually we're not asking questions, we're only assuming. So I'm like, always ask clarifying questions first, and then you can take on, whatever feeling after that point, because then you have an understanding of what that person actually meant.
Yeah. Tawana says, I try to get clients to use I statements. Oh, they are so, Tawana,
Yeah.
you are so on point with that I statement, so that partner and friend do not get defensive. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
you say you, it's over. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you have
Say
to be
you.
on a higher level of communicating if someone says you, because really, like in the four agreements, nothing is about you anyway, right? And
Right.
so whatever they're feeling, that's their feelings. And so you can listen, but yeah, those I statements, that is a good trick if you want someone to really listen to you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Using affirming language allows clients to take ownership. Exactly. This is what you were feeling. And then when you're asking them to clarify, they can give you the clear of what they were meaning behind that.
Mhm.
Because usually it's like, well, when you did this, I felt that you were saying X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
And and then that's the end. Usually it's never like, did you mean this? And a whole situation has went on, or we have started to develop these whole ideas based on just, which we can have feelings, nothing's wrong with how we feel, but we always, when someone else is involved, we always need to make sure that that is actually what they're conveying at that point, because
Yeah.
we know what we're conveying, but we don't know what other people are.
Because we don't know. I always use the example, think about the example. Remember the big controversy about the yellow dress and the blue dress, and how, and then what was the Yandy and the Yandy and Laurel. Like that
Yeah.
was, and me and my husband, we heard with that Yandy and Laurel, we played it and we sat and we heard two different things. And at
Yeah.
the same time, two different people could hear two different, completely different things at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And to remember that, that kind of stuff happens. Like we all perceive things through our own different lenses, and it could
Yeah.
be totally different. So having that communication, like reinforcing to say, okay, this is what I heard, or this is what I
Yeah.
felt. Did
Yeah.
you mean that?
You mean
And
it.
a lot of times is you were way off base.
Yeah.
You were way off because they did not. Yeah.
Yes. And you'll find your partner, your friends frustrated in that. If you're trying to predict, because anxiety sometimes will make you try to predict situations, meaning you're going to react in a certain way based on what you think your partner or your friend is, then, again, you're taking on the assumption of what you feel your partner, and that is creating more stress and anxiety because that might not be your partner reality. Now you've gotten all worked up on this, and your partner's like, I didn't need none of that. I didn't even mean that,
What about? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot of times, what I see in couples, it's just more so of like someone's trying to predict or control the narrative because of their fear that they will lose this person. And it is more so of, not being assured in themselves, some insecurities that they're dealing with themselves. And sometimes the partner has not showed it, but the partner has not maybe communicated or interacted in the love language in a way that the partner can receive it. So sometimes it's just clearing the space for clear communication and clear understanding.
Heather, do you ever see with your clients, couples or not, or individuals, where when things are going great or going good, they still have anxiety because things are going good? Do you see that?
Yes, yes, and I used to, the therapist was like, okay, we're just gonna try this for 2 weeks because we can see weekly or 2 weeks, but sometimes couples are like, no, we need you every week, and then I'm like, but you all are actually doing so good. So yes, when someone is anxious, then they have the fear that the shoe is going to drop,
Mm-hmm.
and so in that time frame, I affirm. And this is one of the reasons why I like journaling, but sometimes people do need guided journaling. But I do just sometimes like free journaling, because if you journal about a present moment and then time changes, you always can come back to that to affirm how this was going on at one time and I made it through this. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of do something like that with couples. I remind them of where they came from, maybe even prior to them meeting or seeing me, and remind them of the ability that and the resilience that they had in each incident, and saying, hey, life is going to happen. So I can't promise the shoe won't drop, but now you have additional tools if that does drop. So affirming that sometimes with other situations that they have been able to overcome. We definitely like to be affirmed in experiences that we've been able to make do in.
Yeah, that's really good. I haven't thought about that, but reminding yourself that you are resilient, that as a couple or as an individual, you have been through some tough times. So when you are worried or concerned about maybe, losing your job, a lot of, people lost jobs in the pandemic,
Yeah.
and or, losing a loved one, or, what we're starting to see, people are having a lot of health anxiety. I mean, the world is opening up. I was in New Orleans. I'm gonna tell you, it was like the pandemic never happened.
He
It
was
was
laughing around like, oh
crazy. People were looking at us like we were crazy because we just left Chicago. So down there, it is no mask. Let me tell you, the hotel that we were at said vaccinated guests, you don't have to wear a mask, and it said unvaccinated guests is optional. I was like, well, what's the point of this? Well, nobody's wearing a mask, but
no.
I was
Right.
from Chicago, so people are experiencing health scares. I mean, that was we lost a lot of people to COVID-19. So so that is real. So when you have those anxieties, you can't tell. Well, you're not going to get COVID because you might get COVID, but how do you manage some of this stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, reinforcing, like I said, the past experiences. I think also having your steps in place. One of the things I'm going to disclose about myself, I am very anxious when it comes to riding Ubers. All my friends are be on here like, she is. I am. And in a past relationship, I didn't make, the person understood. I communicated this. So, see, you guys, clear communication. I
Mm-hmm.
communicated my fear, and they would usually come to get me in an Uber, even if it was an Uber. But times have changed. That is done. So now I'm realizing that I have to be very ahead to soothe that anxiety, that fear. So I'm using the safety app. I'm texting my friends to let them know. I've clearly communicated to them, I am, I have some anxiety in this. And so I'm not misusing people by saying, you got to pick me up. I won't get it no Uber. I'm going to inconvenience people, but I'm definitely communicating to them those shortcomings and letting them know that I do need some assurance. So I don't think people are against assuring people or friends. It's just that constant need without communication. And I'm also doing my part to use my own safety app, and I do a lot of self-talk, like, used to be afraid to fly. I'm not anymore because I went on a plane, and I'm spiritual. I do some faith-based counseling too. And I said, you know, I don't think that my job here is done on earth. And so God would not take me in the most fearful place for me. I don't think he is that cruel, and he just loves me that much. So I say that to myself every time I get on a plane, and I mean, I could sleep, I used to be so afraid. But I just think that it's sometimes the words that we use to affirm ourselves, taking those steps that we need to take, meaning like checking the list twice if you need to at times, and then saying, okay, I've done X, Y, and Z. I can now move forward, and realizing the areas that we do and don't have control in. I can't fly the plane, So I don't have control in that. All I can do is assure myself in the areas that I know really help me in. I I made sure that I checked the flight status, the wet, those are things that I think we can really use to self-talk and assure ourselves more so than the compulsive or the overly interactions that we might do when we're fearful or afraid.
Especially, and that's, bringing it back to relationships. Like when you have a friend that is dealing with either a phobia or some type of extreme fear. I'm very honest about the phobias that I have with cats, and still working on the dogs. Yes, I have a dog. Yes, I'm still afraid. But having a companion, when I'm doing phobia work, having a companion is important, and someone that's safe and that trust, and that people can understand you just not being dramatic. If you have a fear of this flight, you have a fear of Ubers or whatever it is, you're not, nobody wants to walk around being afraid, but it's to be supportive of that friend as they work through that. And so, and that's, very classic anxiety, is phobias are in the
Yes,
anxiety
yes,
vein. And so when you have a friend and you know that this is something, it's mental health, right? And you know that they're working through it and supporting them and saying, okay, all right, girl, how can we help you get through this Uber? I'll ride with you, or
mhm,
I'll follow the Uber, or whatever it is to take you to get comfortable, because that's the next step, is the exposure, right? And
mhm.
so to get exposed and get comfortable.
Yes, yes, yes. Everybody's saying self talk, self talk. It's so true. And having that supportive system, I think when you're able to be clear in the communication, because it is some shame, I think, with a lot of people when they're dealing with anxiety in a certain place, because it's saying to you, saying to others that, something with me bothers me, or
Mm.
I'm not perfect, or, and that
And
takes a
play.
level, yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a level of vulnerability. So
Mhm.
that is definitely sometimes a difficult conversation to have. And so sometimes even in therapy, it just might be the encouraging in relationships to say to your partner, your friend, that, hey, in this area, I need your help. I need your support. And that takes a lot of sometimes work to get to when it becomes, when it's in a friendship, feeling safe enough to say those things like, I don't have this part together. I need
Yeah.
help in that.
Yeah, and that's back to Brene Brown. She talks a lot about vulnerability and connection, and
Yeah.
in your intimate relationships and your friendships, or even your family relationships, being able to be vulnerable and say these things, whatever your feelings are, and to feel safe, and for someone on the receiving end, like to remember, like, this was probably hard for this person, even though I don't understand why they're afraid to get in this Uber, but this is really hard for them to even probably say out loud, and to hold that space for them.
Yes, exactly. Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's just important that, even when we're having friends or partners that are dealing with anxiety, that, on our end, because it can look a lot of ways, but that we're open, to, allowing them to discuss it. And sometimes it might take us encouraging it. Now, I'm not saying that you have to, again, be the martyr or a person that just feels, burnt out or wore out in the relationship. But when we are noticing our friends struggling or our partner struggling in the area, saying, can I help support, or, even suggesting, go talk to someone. That's a lot of times individuals or couples that come to me, they're like, my partner said that I probably should talk at this point, and they recognize that that was a suggestion in love, because the relationship is being impacted at that point.
Yeah.
Even maybe they're realizing that their partner is not having a as fulfilling life as they could based on it. And so it's not always the relationship is falling apart. It could also mean like, I just want my partner to be able to experience life in a different aspect as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because sometimes we have to be careful when we say that, because it can, there's still a stigma, and if you're saying it out of love and making sure that you're expressing that, hey, I suggest that, have you considered talking to a
Mhm.
professional? I'm not trying to be mean, because some people can say that
Yeah.
you need to talk to somebody. No, it's but really,
Yeah.
coming from a place of love and letting that person know that you don't, that there's nothing wrong with that.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's important, just speaking of concerns. I mean, again, assuring that you're coming from a loving place. And,
hmm
sometimes we might have to be like, I'll go with you if you need me to. I'll take that first step with you. And so it can look a lot of different ways. But I think that as partners, when we look at the other side of it, we can always, suggest or support in a way that doesn't stigmatize or make it seem negative. Again, generalized anxiety is the most common mental health. So
yep,
a lot, I say, based on experience, everyone probably has experienced some type of worry, some type of fear, so it is common. It's not something to be negatively looked at.
yeah,
um, and especially in our community, I think is something that, really probably goes undiagnosed because of the fact that we are learning, at a later time about how mental health impacts us
yeah.
and how, microaggression impacts us. That really filters into anxiety. Won't get into that spiel, but I just,
I know. But you're right. And I always think, like I said, someone who deals with anxiety and has phobias, I always think about enslaved people. I know this is, we just had Juneteenth. But
yeah,
can you imagine if I had this phobia? It's really four-legged animals, and I'm out, have to work on this plantation with horses and goats and all this kind of stuff. I couldn't imagine how terrified I would have been, trying to work through that. And then it wasn't any therapy or anything,
they like,
support.
get over it. You got to
Get
do
over
it.
there, get out there, right? And so now we are in a position. We know we have the privilege of access to therapy and to work through some of these anxieties. But like you said, yes, it is the most common, but probably the least. More people probably need a diagnosis. Not a
Yeah.
diagnosis is a bad thing, right? But
Yeah.
to be able to get that access to that, yeah, to that care.
Yes, definitely. And to recognize where some of these worrying and these emotions and feelings are really coming from. I tell people, like, it is so good when you can even say it out loud, sometimes where some of that fear, that mistrust, that anxiety, lies. A lot of times, clients come, I'm pretty sure, Medici, you feel it. They say things that they probably never told people. And they're like, I didn't think this meant anything at that point, but now I'm seeing how this has really, played a role in how I'm feeling. And so,
Yeah, and speaking of journaling, like, one thing is, if somebody, we see, a lot of people are talking about the self-talk. If you could capture, we can't capture all of our thoughts, but I tell my clients, write down whenever you feel something, just write
yeah,
it down. And if you look at the stuff that you just the stuff that you write down, not everything that you thought, but the stuff, you're like, ooh, this is it's a little dangerous here, what I'm saying to myself.
yes, I agree. When I get into like faith based with some of my clients that are going that journey, I always talk about how we're very connected to spirit. And if we are made in God's image, think that everything He said came to pass. So when we speak those things, we are clearly telling our spirit man to bring
Mhm,
them to the front. And
mhm,
I'm like, I know sometimes it really works miracles. I mean, the words, the power of words. When I make clients use mirrors, I make them use boards. I use them myself.
mhm,
And I find myself seeing those things in spaces that make me anxious and worried. I worked in corporate America and
mhm,
I experienced a lot of things that sometimes impact me now. And so I might say a mantra to myself that's on my mirror in a space that may have me worried or anxious.
mhm.
And I start to exude and feel empowered in those moments. So I really think that, if anything is like, yes, if you're journaling and you see that, I always say, well, how can we reframe that at that point? How can we change that to, make us feel like whatever you're saying is not what it is? Some things might be true, but a lot of times they're not. A lot of times it's the things that we utilize negatively about ourselves to cater or to reinforce the thoughts that we're having. If I say to myself, you're to blame for being in this relationship, then I'm also taking any abuse or anything else from the relationship because I put fault on myself now.
Mhm. How do you get through? Because sometimes when we talk about like affirmations, and you're right, I think about it as commercials. You know how we see commercials and we keep getting that same Tide Pod commercial, and when we reach for something, I'm gonna reach for the Tide because that commercial is in my head. How can you say these affirmations without feeling silly? What's your advice to your clients, or what do you offer to them to not feel silly? Because sometimes, when you're saying those things over and over again, it can feel silly. Uh-oh, did we lose?
I
Oh, there.
say, okay, I say, literally talk to yourself like you would talk to your girlfriend, or what you want to say to you. I I say I know it might sound silly, but I usually like just try it, you know. And I say
Mhm.
just try it. I just encourage them to try it. I say try it for a week. I say pick maybe 3 to 2 days consistent that you can do it. And I say just try it. I don't never give out results right away. I don't even tell people what the expectation. I'm not going to tell other people. I just want you to try it. And we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking really for you to try it because I can say, say it this way, say it that way, boss yourself up. I can say all of those things, but it's really like you have your own style. So I just say just try it though, because usually when we talk about it again, I'm a great note taker when I come to doing my sessions. And I always bring it back to like, okay, this is what you said you were going to say. How did that work? And the results and the things people say back to me, I've never had no one say like, I just couldn't do it. This didn't help. So I'm just gonna say that because if you come and if you see me in a session, then you'll know what happens after that. But I'm not gonna
We
keep it on.
gotta give them a little taste because you got a wait list, Heather. You got a wait list. So
I just think it's based on the report that clients have. I don't bring that up right away. But I just think that if you're willing to do the work and if you're hurting, none of this is silly because some things is gonna be able to work for you and some things we're gonna throw out the window. So if you try it, we're not losing. We're only gaining a better understanding of what you do use and what you're not going to use.
yeah,
So, I tell them that, like, hey,
yeah. Okay, all right. So because we kind of approaching on our time. Oh, we really went over our time, but that's okay. What are some last thoughts about just anxiety, some coping, something you want us to sort of walk away from all of this with? Oh, I think we got stuck. I'm gonna give her a couple of minutes. I don't know if it's me. Okay. So listen, guys, thank you so much for holding in. We lost Heather, but she probably popped back in before I wrap up. We're doing this every Monday through this whole summer. We're going to be interviewing our therapist at Ashe Counseling, getting some good information out there. And this is also going to be, live on YouTube, so you can see the rebroadcast. Thank you for continuing to support us. We, I really appreciate you guys coming back. So next week we have another guest. So I'll post it live. You'll see who that guest is and what our topic is. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you next week. Bye.